Thanks, Chair. I suppose, look, again, I'll just take this opportunity to welcome you all here this evening or this afternoon. I just have a number of questions there. The first one, I suppose, should be directed to Inclusion Ireland. I noticed in your report that she mentioned that 87% of your clients have returned to their school setting or to their adult services. I was just wondering, in terms of Inclusion Ireland, as a proportion or percentage of your own membership, what is the split there between, we'll say, schoolgoers and people attending adult day services? Because I suppose, like many other of the TDs here and across the country, many of the people that are, I suppose, availing of adult day services in particular, you know, it's very difficult for those families. Many of them have not returned. In the instances where some of them have returned, it's confined to 1 day a week, whereas opposed to last year, they were possibly getting 4.5, 5 days a week. So could you just make a comment maybe from Inclusion Ireland just about the situation for people in adult services?
Very quickly, the 87% relates to schools. Then there's about just slightly over 9% we're saying there's a staggered back to school piece where they have a number of days in school and a number of days of remote learning for the first number of weeks, and then about 3%, 4% we're saying that it's going to be remote, and we suspect they are mainly the folks in the high medical need. I know the topic here isn't day services today, but as we understand it, definitely by the end of this week the vast majority of adult day services will be back, but not on a full-time basis. Anecdotally, we're hearing people are getting anything between 2 and 3 days a week, and that's you know, I suppose that's probably an issue for a different minister, but I suppose it hasn't gotten the amount of funding towards it that schools have had in relation to reopening.
Yep, thank you for that comment. I suppose just to again, you know, express the difficulties that those people are having, you know, and I suppose each case for those families is specific to that child or to that adult. So you know, I just hope that they can get to resume to some kind of normality in the coming weeks ahead. Just my second question then, it relates to school transport, and I'd be interested to hear from the parents groups present. My own experience in my own constituency is we have a number of villages, Watergrass Hill being one, where 46 children are currently without a bus, Glenville 13, Carrignavar half dozen, out towards Blarney Whitechurch another 14 children without a bus since yesterday. I noticed that in your own surveys that many people have expressed that they're satisfied with the return and have been fairly complimentary, albeit there has been some criticism of the school transport system in that report. I was just wondering, from the parents' point of view, the Parents' Council's point of view here today, what is your, I suppose, interaction with CIE or Bus Éireann been like? And I suppose, have you a comment on the overall issue with school transport?
School transport at the start of every year is an issue, and I think probably the biggest issue that happened this year, apart at all from the major problems that COVID bring with it, has been the change from 100% to 50% capacity on transport, and that only happened relatively recently. So it is our understanding that the transport services are still working through that and trying to put those buses where we don't have them in place. The issue of transporting children to school, we have identified a number of times, is an integral part of education and of school life, and therefore it's got to be treated as such. The commitment has been given that if a parent, for whatever reason, can't avail of the public transport system, the public school transport system, that is, that they will be facilitated and they will be repaid for any of the costs that they incur to get their children to school. That is fine, but we have highlighted the fact that quite a considerable number of people who might fall into those brackets are particularly vulnerable families who may not have have the wherewithal to be able to afford those costs up front. And that is something that does need to be addressed, and addressed very quickly. We would hope, in light of the speed with which some other matters are addressed, that will be addressed quickly, as it's, as I say, an integral part of going back to school.
Could I just ask one final question about July provision? As you're well aware, there was a specific scheme, we'd say, this year, and a lot of those extra resources went into people with special needs to accommodate them during the lockdown period. What was your experience, I suppose, of the July provision this year, and where would you like to see improvements or, you know, additional funding go for next year, given that, I suppose, these provisions are targeted at our most vulnerable children? Thank you.
I suppose, just to begin, I suppose at the very start, the messaging around who would qualify and who wouldn't was quite mixed from the department, but eventually it settled down on who was to qualify. The feedback we've got is that it has been a very positive programme for people that experienced it, I suppose. And as an advocacy organisation, we quite often hear only the bad stories. People tend not to ring us up and tell us about these wonderful things that have happened. So the silence on it is, you know, it's a case of no news being good news. But any anecdotal reports we've had are have been of quite successful summer provision experiences.
You may be looking to next year. What ran this summer wasn't actually the July provision scheme. It was called a summer programme, because the July provision scheme is a separate set of very restrictive criteria, whereas thousands of other children finally got the opportunity to have an extended school year that would normally qualify for July provision. So in terms of interacting with the department and the minister, what we'd be looking for is the summer of 2021, that we would be looking to that more broader model of supporting children with all types of disabilities. Not to have not just an extended school year, albeit for particularly post-primary school students, it more be appropriate to have that educational input, but certainly the social and psychological supports, the ability to be able to provide students with a programme that is both educational but also social, sporting over that summer period, whereby it's not just restricted to having access to a teacher, but whereby an SNA may be more appropriate, and giving parents that choice. Again, certainly silence led to success, but anecdotally, you know, there was the photos, and certainly for those children actually who did avail of the summer programme, the easing back into school has been a substantial success of that, because they already got to see what their school looked like, the staff, the layout of it, and that familiarity that they were afforded because they got in the door much earlier. So we were always looking for an extension of the July provision scheme, but certainly what we saw was a summer programme that, albeit had issues around communication in the beginning, but certainly that is the way forward, and that's what we'll be looking to do for the summer 2021.